Next on TCM, Bonnie and Clyde. Then The French Connection. And later, Hoosiers. We remember a legend on TCM tonight.
Hello and welcome to Turner Classic Movies. I'm Dave Karger. Tonight we're honoring a true Hollywood legend who passed away in February, Gene Hackman. Beginning in the early 1960s, Hackman spent more than 40 years working tirelessly in the movies, often appearing in multiple films a year. Whether he was starring in a tense drama or a light comedy, playing a lead role or a supporting character, Hackman consistently gave performances that were memorable, nuanced, and believable. As critic Janet Maslin wrote in the New York Times in 1988, there's no identifiable quality that makes Mr. Hackman stand out. He simply makes himself outstandingly vital and real. Tonight on TCM, we're presenting just a small sample of Gene Hackman's powerful performances, beginning with a film he made early on in his career. From Warner Brothers in 1967, it's Bonnie and Clyde. Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway star as the real-life Depression-era outlaws Clyde Barrow and Bonnie Parker, and Gene Hackman leads the supporting cast as Clyde's brother, Buck Barrow, who becomes a member of their infamous gang. 3 years earlier, Hackman had given his first credited big-screen performance in another film starring Warren Beatty, Lilith, which was released in 1964. Hackman only had a small role in that film, but his performance made a lasting impression on Beatty. On Bonnie and Clyde, Beatty was not only the star, but the producer, and he had his pick of the actors he wanted to cast. He remembered Gene Hackman, who was still just getting started in the business, and he brought him on board to play his brother. Hackman's performance earned him an Oscar nomination, the first of 5 he received in his career. From 1967, directed by Arthur Penn, with a cast that also includes Michael J. Pollard, Estelle Parsons, and Gene Wilder, this is Bonnie and Clyde. When it premiered in 1967, Bonnie and Clyde became highly controversial for its use of graphic violence, especially in the film's final sequence. Most critics panned the movie, and at first, audiences stayed away, but Warren Beatty, who produced the film, kept on promoting it until it finally caught on. Bonnie and Clyde became one of the top contenders at the 1968 Academy Awards ceremony, earning 10 Oscar nominations, including for Best Picture. 5 members of the cast were nominated, including 2 in the Best Supporting Actor category, Michael J. Pollard and Gene Hackman. Estelle Parsons was the only one in the cast who won an Oscar for her memorable performance as Blanche, but Gene Hackman would go on to win 4 years later for his lead performance in The French Connection. In the meantime, he earned a second nomination as Best Supporting Actor in 1970, co-starring with Melvyn Douglas in I Never Sang for My Father. Up next, Gene Hackman returns in his first Oscar-winning role as renegade detective Popeye Doyle in a landmark crime drama from 1971.
Next on TCM, The French Connection, then Hoosiers, and later Mississippi Burning. Hackman takes the heat on TCM tonight.
Hi, I'm Dave Karger. Welcome back to TCM as we continue to pay tribute to the one and only Gene Hackman. In a career that spanned 5 decades, Hackman gave dozens of memorable performances, but he will forever be associated with the character he played in the movie that's up next. From director William Friedkin in 1971, it's The French Connection. Hackman plays Jimmy Popeye Doyle, a crude and relentless New York City cop on the narcotics squad who does things his own way, defying orders and protocols in order to bring in criminals by any means necessary. Together with his partner, played by Roy Scheider, Doyle sets out to catch an elusive Frenchman who's been running an international drug smuggling operation. The French Connection was based on Robin Moore's 1969 book about a real case in 1961 when 2 New York City cops investigated an international heroin trafficking ring. The detectives involved in that case served as technical advisors on the film. Gene Hackman and Roy Scheider spent a month patrolling the city with them in order to get a feel for their characters before the cameras started rolling. Hackman later said that time together also gave him the chance to bond with Scheider, and the 2 actors developed a natural rapport that comes across on screen. Both Hackman and Scheider were just beginning to find success on the big screen when they were cast in The French Connection. Their director, William Friedkin, had made several films, but this was still the early stage of his career. The French Connection was unlike anything American audiences had ever seen, with its gritty realism, offensive language, and groundbreaking car chase sequences, and nobody knew whether it would be a hit. As it turned out, critics and audiences in the early 1970s were ready for this kind of film. The movie went on to earn 8 Oscar nominations, winning 5, including Best Picture, Best Director, and a Best Actor Oscar for Gene Hackman. From 1971, here is The French Connection. For Gene Hackman, Popeye Doyle became the breakout role of his career. While he already had 2 Oscar nominations under his belt for his supporting roles in Bonnie and Clyde and I Never Sang for My Father, The French Connection was the first time he was given the chance to shine as a true star. Looking back on the production in a 2008 interview, Hackman said he had never been pushed as much by a director as he was by William Friedkin in The French Connection. Early on, he told Friedkin he wanted to quit because he wasn't comfortable playing a character who was constantly beating up on people and using bigoted, hateful language. He felt it was going to be too much to keep that energy going for months during the grueling outdoor shoot on the New York City streets in winter. To Friedkin's credit, Hackman said he decided not to let me go. The movie put Gene Hackman on the map as a major star and won him his first Oscar, this time as Best Actor. He went on to reprise the role one more time in The French Connection 2, which was released 4 years later in 1975. Up next, Gene Hackman plays a high school basketball coach in one of his most beloved films, released in 1986.
Next on TCM, Hoosiers, then Mississippi Burning, and later, Night Moves. We're back with more Hackman on TCM Tonight.
Thanks for being here with me tonight on TCM. I'm Dave Karger. We're in the middle of a special tribute to one of the greatest actors of the second half of the 20th century, Gene Hackman. Born Eugene Hackman on January 30th, 1930, he passed away in February at the age of 95. Hackman's interest in acting began in the early 1950s after he served in the Marine Corps. He started out working in the theater and on television before making his film debut in 1961. By the end of the decade, he had scored 2 Best Supporting Actor Oscar nominations, but he didn't break through as a major Hollywood star until 1971, when he gave an Oscar-winning lead performance as New York City detective Popeye Doyle in The French Connection. Hackman was always a tireless worker, and he frequently appeared in multiple films in a single year. But by the time he made our next movie, his career had begun to drag. In the mid-1980s, he starred in a string of box office flops and later confessed that he only agreed to make this next film because he needed the money. It turned out to be one of the most beloved films of his career. From 1986, it's Hoosiers. Gene Hackman stars as Norman Dale, a former college basketball coach who accepts a job leading a struggling high school team in a small town in Indiana. His demanding style and status as an outsider bring him into conflict with the players and townspeople, but he sees potential in the underdog team and leads them all the way to the state championship. The cast also includes Barbara Hershey as a teacher who's skeptical about the new coach, and Dennis Hopper, who gives an Oscar-nominated performance as the town drunk who becomes Hackman's unlikely assistant. From 1986, directed by David Anspaugh in his feature directorial debut, this is Hoosiers. Hoosiers was loosely based on the true story of the 1954 Indiana State High School basketball champions, the Milan Indians. The impressive story of the team's victory became the stuff of legend in Indiana, and it was a story that many people knew well, including Hoosiers screenwriter Angelo Pizzo and director David Anspaugh, who met when they were students at Indiana University. They decided to shoot the entire film on location in Indiana, and the Midwestern setting was also a homecoming for the movie's star, Gene Hackman. Hackman had spent his childhood growing up in nearby Danville, Illinois. He later said that during production, a woman came up to him who said she had known his mother back in Danville. She even had photographs of his mother, which she gave to him. For Hackman, this was especially meaningful because his mother had died in a fire that also destroyed all their family photos. Hoosiers turned out to be an important break for Gene Hackman at a low point in his career. and he soon returned to form with two films that earned him Academy Award nominations: Clint Eastwood's 1992 Western Unforgiven, which won Hackman his second Oscar, and the movie that's up next. Gene Hackman co-stars with Willem Dafoe and Frances McDormand in a 1988 crime thriller set in Mississippi during the Civil Rights Movement.
Next on TCM, Mississippi Burning, then Night Moves, and later, Ziegfeld Follies. Have we got a review for you on TCM tonight?